Good evening. We have half a Christmas tree up. So yesterday I was talking about the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. Limbic system being this ancient fight, flight, freeze part of the brain, kicks in very quickly, floods the system with all the adrenaline and all the things we need to be able to run away from lions and tigers and traffic wardens. And then we have the prefrontal cortex, the logical kind of system that kind of thinks things through methodically, unemotionally, and very calmly, and it's very, very high cost. So the limbic system is important for today. The limbic system is a very, very low energy system. It doesn't take any energy really to operate. The prefrontal cortex, one of the highest calorie burning parts of the brain, takes an awful lot of effort to actually kind of use it. And this is really important for what I want to talk about today. So we are going to be logical when we're rested. We're going to be methodical. We're going to be kind of unemotional and kind of think things through logically when we're rested. However, the inverse of this is true. When we're tired and we don't have an awful lot of energy to spare, we're likely to be more emotional and more likely to find it harder to resist urges like, well, it's very applicable now. I've got this cold. I didn't sleep very well last night. It's been a hell of a week. Everything's ramping up, actually. Rather than it kind of winding down for Christmas, it's ramping up, and I'm feeling more and more tired. As a result of that, I'm a bit more cranky. I've just had to apologise to Indy for being just a little bit short and snappy, and I find it very, very hard to resist the crisps and the chocolate and stuff like that because I'm tired. We don't say to somebody, do you know what, I'm feeling very tired and logical at the minute. We tend to say, I'm feeling very tired and emotional, right? So that's an important thing to kind of understand. It's going to be harder for us to kind of resist urges, booze or chocolate or whatever it might be. When we're tired, it's probably an important part of us kind of being better. We know sleep's important anyway. So that's the first thing I think is interesting to know. The second thing is more about this idea of journaling and speaking out loud, like going for a coffee with a friend, talking through your problems, even just saying it out loud. Some of the research was just a case of actually saying an emotion out loud, and it actually kind of triggered the movement of the thought process from the limbic system to the prefrontal cortex. So speaking and writing, journaling, making lists, talking to your friends. Essentially, there's loads of research that shows in fMRI scanners the movement of the thought process going from the limbic system, from that emotional center, being moved to the prefrontal cortex, that logical center. So, like I said, going out for a cup of coffee and talking to friends, writing out lists. We all know you feel better when you write a list. And journaling, as I've been discovering, which is what triggered these videos. Me writing, look, page 1 of my new book today. These are the notes from what you're hearing right now today. Writing them out. Excuse me, told you I had a cold and a cough. Writing them out kind of helps you get a little bit more logical approach to it. Now, it seems like there's a lot of kind of evolutionary reasons for this to do with community and talking things through tribally. But one of the reasons why this seems to exist that I found really interesting was this idea of narrative structure. So when you've got all these thoughts and feelings flowing around your head, they're often disjointed. They're often kind of almost in isolation, that you feel a bit frustrated about something. But when you go out for a cup of coffee with a friend, or you start writing these things out, you've got to give it structure. You kind of got to say, well, I'm feeling a bit frustrated. And I started to realise, that I was feeling a bit frustrated last night when this happened. And earlier on in the day, this happened. Just by putting that narrative structure in place, you're actually starting to give it some kind of a logical process. You're actually figuring out the patterns and the kind of storyline as to what's occurring. And that is a way of you figuring out how you feel about something, possibly even why you feel about that. And that seemingly is a massive part of it. It makes total sense to me. As somebody that's fascinated by storytelling, it kind of makes sense that the idea of us kind of formulating a story, a narrative structure as to why we feel like we do, has such a massive impact on how we deal with how we feel. Now, there's one little caveat to this. Fascinating as I find this, and I genuinely do, makes so much sense as to why, I'll sit down with my little notebook and I'll write down, whatever it is that's running through my mind, like talking about pride or talking about something to do with sports or whatever, how I feel that I'm overweight or that I'm struggling with not drinking or whatever it might be. I might write that down, and then as a process of kind of thinking that through logically, I kind of come to some sort of conclusion about it. However, I will tell you this, obviously, famously in storytelling structure, the person telling the story, the narrator, is often incredibly unreliable, the famous unreliable narrator. And we could be weaving in flaws into this, and of course, that story isn't necessarily true, and we might end up blaming somebody else or something else for the way that we feel. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about necessarily truth here. I'm just talking about how we end up taking a more logical slant. Now, my hope is that if we were to take more of a logical slant, it's more likely to be a little bit closer to the truth. I don't know how you feel, but whenever I write anything down or I go for a cup of coffee with somebody and I chat something through, it's very rare that I come out feeling worse about the thing that I went in there, with the emotions in my head. Usually I feel a little bit more like I've figured out why it happened, what caused it, maybe what I need to do to sort it out. And that's the important thing, that logical part jumps into your brain. And it's been a massive discovery for me, this journaling. I know I make my videos and that's helped, but writing it down, first time I've ever done it. Anyway, I've got a hell of a weekend coming up. It doesn't stop tonight on Friday. I've got an open day that I need to do tomorrow, which means I'm going to have to skip park run, but it means I've still got to do a run, still got to do a yoga session, I've still got to do my core workout. It means I'm going to have to do all that in the morning, and I've still got a boxing session to carry over. Next weekend is equally just as mental, and then hopefully the following week, by the middle of the week after that, I think like the 17th or the 18th, might actually start calming down, and I'll also be coming towards the end of this 84-day challenge. Right now, I'm not feeling 100%. I'm struggling with it, which isn't helping, with the old limbic system kicking in and all the urges to do all the things that I shouldn't and don't want to do. Anyway, have a lovely weekend, and I will catch up with you tomorrow. Merry Christmas.